this is where we begin from in our thing. Now I'll continue now in just mentioning what he says, because it's a long quote in English from Surah Al-Araf. He says, those who follow the messenger, the unlettered prophet, Nabi Alumi, who they find mentioned in the Torah and the Injil, because he's mentioned in both the Torah and the Injil. He commands them. What does the prophet command us to? He commands them to what is just, the adl, and he forbids them what is evil. He allows them as lawful what is pure. He prohibits what is impure. He releases them from their heavy burdens and from the yokes that are upon. So he is the one who frees us. By his teaching, he frees us. So those who believe in him, which we do inshallah, and who honor him, which we do inshallah, and we help him inshallah, and follow the light which is sent down with him, those are the people who will prosper. So if you see, you want to know who are the people who prosper, those are the people. Submission to the will and to the law of Allah is the origin of freedom from our perspective. This submission to Islam is what liberates the mind, it liberates the soul, and it liberates the behavior from all evil influences of the world, and helps us human beings to overcome these dhalims, these oppressive tyrants that we mentioned at the beginning, their unjust laws, their lusts, their corruption, their deviation, and all of the things to which they're enslaved to. Submission, as we said, is Islam to the will of Allah, is what grants human beings the means to choose a better way of life and to live their life in harmony with the law of the universe, because it is Allah who made the universe, so all of the laws are His laws. If we follow His laws, you are in harmony with the universe. This form of submission to the will and the prescriptions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is known in the present time as al-Islam. And it was revealed to the Prophet of humanity, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, just as it was to all of those who came before him. Ibrahim alayhi-s-salaam, Musa alayhi-s-salaam, Dawood alayhi-s-salaam, and Isa alayhi-s-salaam. And I mentioned these because they're the bearers of written messages from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of them brought the same message. وَلَا نُفَرِّقُ بَيْنَ أَحَدٍ مِّنْهُمْ, and we don't make any differentiation between them. And such this message that came with Islam is a message to free human beings from the darkness of polytheism, from the darkness of paganism, the darkness of slavery, the darkness of injustice, and to open the doors to moral and social reform, as well as creating an atmosphere of security and safety in which human beings are free to think, free to invent, and free to seek the road to perfection and salvation and hope and optimism, and to give true meaning to their existence. That's what it's all about. Oppression and servitude, slavery of any form, deprives us of our freedom, of our moral freedom, and these things of oppression and servitude, of dhulm yani, are prisons in which terror and tyranny devour our self-image, our will, and our very desire to grow spiritually. Oppression of all forms and servitude of all forms deprives human beings of all sense of a higher purpose, and they rob us of our free will, and they destroy all that is good in our natures. Following the way of Islam, alhamdulillah, grants freedom, a freedom that is based upon commitment, a freedom that is based upon responsibility, because without commitment and responsibility, there is no freedom. Freedom without restraint leads to nihilism, the consequence of which is the complete breakdown of the moral and the social order. The irresponsible concept of freedom expounded by the secular New World Order, the modern theories of freedom of expression, lead, as we can see, all over the world only to corruption and immorality. And since they are not tied to any ultimate higher moral values, ethics, or self-control, Islamic freedom, on the other hand, lies in commitment and in responsibility. And these two things, commitment and responsibility, form an integral part of each other, and they can in no way ever be separated. There is no freedom of choice without responsibility, and there is no responsibility without freedom. Because the way of Islam insists that we all have free will, la ikraha fi din. And since that is the way that Allah has created us, on the fitrah, yani, it allows us to fully express this freedom, it allows us to practice it, but within what? Within the limits of commitment, responsibility, and self-control that is mandated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Each of us have an obligation to choose the path of righteousness and to safeguard our freedom and most importantly the freedom of other human beings. Because free will is granted to us and guaranteed to us within the way of Islam, it is expected that we will use this freedom that we have been given to further knowledge in all areas which will help bring about improvement of all people who live upon this earth. This is known as the principle of maslahah, which means practically that which is permitted or prohibited or permitted on the basis of whether or not it serves the public's benefit or welfare, derived as it is from the root salahah, which means that which is good, that which is wholesome, that which is sound, that which is right. And by it, all of us are urged to consider the physical and spiritual freedom of other human beings in all of our undertakings. And this prevents freedom from being turned into dictatorship. A dictatorship which exploits and usurps the inalienable rights of the humans, of the many, for the benefit of the select few, or in some cases for even a single individual, as we see in places like Libya and so forth. Single examples of this so that you can better understand this. How does this principle of maslahah relate to the human life? Let's take, for instance, an engineer. An engineer can design a bomb, or an engineer can design a bridge. A pharmacist. A pharmacist can create a poison or a panacea. A teacher can teach us how to game the system for our own personal gain, or how to put the system to work for the common good. This choice, in accord with the prescriptions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala contained in the way of Islam, must be based upon this principle of maslahah, which says that in most cases, not all cases, but in most cases, a bridge is more useful than a bomb. A panacea is better than a poison. And working for the common good is better than working to enrich yourself alone. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us many, many examples. Lessons that are drawn from history so that we can understand. These are called mathal. In it we find the stories of nations and communities that have destroyed themselves in the past by ignoring the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You only have to look and you see. At night, I used to take a bus when I lived in Egypt. I would go back to my town. I lived in Alexandria. I'd take a bus from Cairo to Alexandria, and we go outside of Cairo, and we turn the corner, and there were the pyramids. Where are the people who made the pyramids? Gone. It's gone like that. Gone. Giants upon the earth. Average Egyptian would not know how to make a pyramid today, believe me. They can barely make the system to move people about work. It's gone. Comes and it goes. And it goes directly in relationship to following this thing. Allah says, in the meaning of Allah's words, in Surah Mutaffifin, He says, haven't you traveled in the land? Don't you see what happened to those who believed before you? They were mightier than those now in power. And the traces that they left on the earth, yani those pyramids, those buildings, those things left upon the earth, yet Allah sees them for their sins, and they had no protector from Allah. And when you say to them, إِذَا تُتْلَى عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُنَا قُلْ أَسَاطِيرُ الْأَوَّلِينَ. When you tell them about this, they say, this is something from the old people, from the ancients. He says, like those before them, they were more powerful than you, with more wealth, with more offspring. They enjoyed their lives. You enjoy your lives, just as those before you enjoyed their lives. You joke as they joke. But they had their work crumble in this world and the next, and they were the losers. Didn't the news come to you about the people of Nuh? What happened to the people of no people? Gone. The tsunami, nothing. This was a tsunami that took everybody away. The whole world gone. That's the qadr of Allah. He took it all and took it away. He said, don't you know about the people of Nuh? Haven't you seen that? Don't you know about the people of Ad? The people of Thamud? The people of Ibrahim? The inhabitants of Madian? The people of the drowned cities, yani in the Dead Sea? Where are they? Their messengers brought them clear signs. Allah did not wrong them. They wronged themselves. This is the story of history. The emphasis on materialism and freedom without responsibility in modern society is destroying before our eyes the social and moral fabric of those societies. We can see it. It gives rise to moral decadence. It gives rise to promiscuity, to crime, to lack of respect for moral, legal, and natural courses of action. Freedom is everywhere abused. It has become indeed a subversive tool, a scourge to mankind. The abuse of freedom results in chaos. In the world over, it leads to corruption, to crime, to materialism, to militarism, to war, to rape, to poverty, to drug addiction, to alcohol addiction. And freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose. National and international organizations agree. You look at the surveys that are done. Drug addiction throughout the industrialized world increases at an alarming rate. 50 million people worldwide are thought right now to be addicted to drugs. That's from the UN. 50 million people. The estimated among the poor, mainly black ghettos of North America cites the addiction rate is as high as 50%. On American Indian reservations, alcoholism rises as high as 80%. This increase is taking place in spite of massive public awareness campaigns, millions, if not billions of dollars spent on education, not to mention what is spent on the so-called war on drugs. Thousands of people are jailed throughout the world every day for drug-related crime. But the true causes of this drug addiction, the breakdown of these moral values, the helplessness, the despair of the underprivileged, and the emphasis of a secular society on instant self-gratification. Everybody can be Lady Gaga, and the solution of problems are never addressed. Among the populations, a large survey suggests 20% of the people all over the world are addicted to drugs and alcohol. Rates are highest among the young people. Millions and billions of dollars that could be spent on bettering the lives of poor. We see they want to cut this, they want to cut that, they want to cut this, they want to cut that. All of those things, and give these rich people tax breaks. This is the lives of the poor. This is the lives of the underprivileged. And they're wasted on the war against drugs and drug pushers. In the 1980s, with the introduction of crack into the United States, the crime rate due to drug addiction increased dramatically. It is estimated that 60% of young Americans have experimented with one type of another or drug today. And there's no reason to expect that the figures are any lower in any other industrialized countries. In the Soviet Union, alcoholics are now estimated to number more than 40 million. That's alcoholics. That's not somebody who has a drink. That's an alcoholic. That's a person who can't get up in the morning without a drink. And these numbers have an adverse effect on what? On everything in the society. Jeune Afrique in Paris reports 60% of traffic accidents and 40% of drug cases in France are a result of alcoholism. In 1986, back then in Japan, 25,524 people that year committed suicide as a result of drugs. 25,000 people! And the numbers have increased every year. That was the last year I could find the figures for. In Britain, 1 out of every 5 children suffers from the consequence of family breakdown. Drug addiction, related crimes, unprecedented rates, and bringing appalling suffering to the people. And additionally, human life is gravely threatened by the collapse of the natural male-female relationship.